Well, here she is at Montana Elastomers. Industrial Coatings basically sprayed the bed liner material, actual bed liner material, through the entire cab. Floorboards look amazing. The seams and welds where those came together look great. So that is the interior. Could have done after painting, but we had some openings on the schedule, so fed it in that way. I like the lighter tan to the dark brown. Once it gets outside, probably look a little better. This inside light doesn't look that great. So that is that. I like that headliner, came out really great. I think it looks good. It's hard to see the contour and shape, but very cool. Now we get it home, start finish sanding and jamming out and paint the inside. It's a little bit out of sequence, but it's almost impossible to hurt this bed liner material, so we'll be fine. There's a little progress report. She looks like she's going backwards, but the last primer was the first epoxy primer. And so when I do my body work, I do basically everything rough sanded and 80 grit, and then I put a thick epoxy primer on everything, and then I sand with 220, and I block with 220, find any kind of lows and highs. And like over here, there was a tiny little dimple low spot here, and a few other little spots. There's a tiny little low spot right there. So touch up with just a tiny bit of filler. We just talked about the bed liner. That's going to look great. So yeah, there's a lot of the primer still there, but like you say, you block out and you sand through this primer. This primer gives me something to kind of visually see as you block it out. And it's actually really close to what I consider my second primer. I will put a thick second epoxy primer on, and I will wet sand that with 400 before paint. So body work is really close to being totally done. Everything's looking great that way. Same thing, even on the fiberglass body, you end up sanding and finding little tiny nicks and holes and different things that need to be touched up. Turn off the panel here. Yeah, it's a little quieter now. So that's that. If you notice, the color of the material on the inside gives kind of a layout of our color. Basically, what this is going to look like is we're going to go with a dark metallic brown body. The entire thing is going to be a dark metallic brown. From the swept line, body line down a foot or so, we're going to do the center stripe in a gold. So it'll be brown with a gold stripe, possibly a very small red pinstripe in the center of the body line to kind of accent the swept line, because that's the whole thing here. It's a swept line Ramcharger that never really existed, so we really want to make the swept line be a swept line. The interior, the seats are getting reupholstered, and they're going to come out looking really awesome. Hoping people really like that. The dash had like the 3-button, the 3-knob old school AM radio. We just welded those holes in, got rid of that, and shaved up some other holes and things that were on it. I need to sand that down, get that in primer, so it'll be ready to go. We are going to keep the factory speaker, and I'm going to be putting a speaker there with a, not really a hidden radio. It's going to have a radio in behind the dash that just runs off phone, something that direction, but no actual controller. Well, actually, there will be a controller, but I can show you that later. So yeah, that is where we're at right now. I'm going to get back to sanding a little bit more. My arms are like jello. And let's get one more coat of primer on it. And then a lot more sanding, and maybe between Christmas break and New Year's break, there's a pretty good possibility that this might be a pretty shiny vehicle. And then I can start doing wiring and thingies and thingies and thingies. Well, she's sanded as much as I'm going to get her. That's been cleaned up and taken care of. Now I'm going to fire up the pressure washer, get everything super clean, get all the dust and everything down in the booth, and wash it down once it's dry, mask it off, and get her some primer. Well, masked off. It's a little late, but I think I'm just going to crank up the heat, throw a coat on, let her sit, then I can come in the morning and demask, and it'll be ready for wet sanding. Well, unlike the first coat, what was a real thin one coat epoxy, this is, I actually reduced the other one. This actually is a straight epoxy. I've got almost 3 coats over the whole thing, so there should be plenty of base there. Even right now it's got a nice shine to it, even with the epoxy. It should give me a nice shine, a nice thickness to be able to, heater's coming on. Wet sand this down, give me lots of base to wet sand, so everything's looking really nice. Should be pretty cool when it's done. Figured I should show a little bit. It's the weekend before New Year's. We've sanded and worked on it a little bit on Christmas weekend. Family and things were here, so didn't do too much, but I have wet sanded and sanded again and washed again. It needs to get washed and cleaned, but it is looking pretty smooth. So I am fairly confident that a little bit more detail work, got my drivers, got a little bit more detail work going on, and it's about ready for sealer. Once I get sealer on, she'll be ready for some color. So I'll keep working and show the next 2 steps and maybe put all the paint and everything in one video. Well, while Tony is struggling with his Porsche, we have made some hangers and brackets and things to hang the doors, window pillars, pieces and parts. Having a little tiny paint booth, you got to kind of make do with what you can, but this is kind of the layout we're going to do. I am doing a single stage paint, and it is a pearl single stage. So spraying, like if you laid the doors flat and painted them and then painted the car, there's a very high possibility the pearls won't lay the same as they did on the horizontal. And it just won't quite look the same color when you lay things out and spray the one side. Because it's single stage, you basically have to wait till the next day to flip it to spray the other side, and then you're laying it on the fresh painted side, and then you're double masking things that way. So I'm trying to set it up in such a manner that I can paint as much in one color as possible, and that is where I'm at. So this is my current little setup. Got a lot more cleaning to do of the booth. We've got more lights to set up. And yeah, then we will get her coated, or get her painted, and get main color on it. I'm hoping tomorrow it'll be a bright shiny brown, and then come back the next day, assemble the doors, get them on, and then work on the two-tone stripe. Well, we are finally in sealer. It has been taking forever. Just stepped out of the booth, so there's lots of fog in here. Doors look really nice. See if I can see the roof without stepping on the roof. It's a little dry right in the center. I will Scotch-Brite that after the sealers hardens up, and I'll wipe that down, and I'll flood the actual color on a little thicker. Both the big tires going on this, if someone can see the roof and can see how dry the roof is, all good for them. All right, let this bake for a little while. And good old tube heater, cook it. Get some color on this beast. Well, we have one color of base on. I guess we have petroleum primate on the TV at the moment. So while that is on, we can see our first coat. Now, yes, I've left the stripe a little thin right there. I've got a little bit of tiger striping happening on the first coat. The heavy pearls will do that. Second coat should definitely even a lot of that out. My gun's not the best for it. My air pressure kind of spits it a little bit. You can really see it right there. The hood, I'm actually really happy with. It's not bad at all. It's got a nice even coat to it. I haven't even done the dash or anything. That brown is actually the single stage. I single staged it in a dark brown first to do everything behind the jams and everything that way. I am really low on paint, and being it's the weekend, I won't be able to get any more, so I'm going to put on what I can. If I don't have enough to do the dash and that kind of thing, at least I'll have the doors and the body done so that I can put the doors together and put the stripe in it. So I probably won't even do these. I haven't even put a coat on them. I'm going to kind of wait till last-ish on those. All right, mix up another quart and see what we get. 2.5 coats out of paint, and it looks really good. I'll leave the heat on tonight, let it sparkly. Let it bake, let it get good and hot, and tomorrow we'll put the doors on, mask everything off, and put the gold stripe on it. I had enough to put one thin coat of brown where the stripe's going to be, just so that it's a similar pearl through everything. Dash came out looking really nice. Got all the little accessories. There's a couple runs on the door pillar pieces. We'll see how they look after they're dry. I might sand them down and put one more coat on them. I have just a tiny bit to do touch-ups or airbrushing. But for what I've got done for today, I'm very excited that I did not have to run out and have some sort of weird mask line or anything like that. Very happy with it. Well, let's see how tomorrow comes out. You can see the center where it's a little thin right through here. You can see kind of a stripe there and a stripe there. That was white with primer. I just blew one thin coat of brown there because that's where the gold stripe's going to go. So you can kind of see the difference from the top to the bottom, but from the body line up, she came out really nice. It's real tight for space, but the backs of them are coated well. Oh, bummer of a birthmark. Got me a big run. That's the only run I've seen. Well, I guess the good part is I can mask off and paint just the top of the door and fix that one spot. Bummer. Well, that's the next day. Yeah. Hey, there's me. Right there. Right there. Right there. Seeing the run right there. That's me right there. That guy right there, he did that. He did that. That run right there. But I'm also the closest to the ventilator. It's the coldest spot. So that's probably what happened there. Well, it's New Year's Eve. Still a little early out. Sky is pretty. Let's see how the project came out. Oh, now I can turn on my... Check out this. Last year's Christmas present. Oop, can I find the button? Whoa. Let there be light. All right. Well, good morning. Let's see how she looks. Left the heat on. I will say, so that run that I had in that door last night, I was staring at it and I knew I was going to have to sand it down and work on it. So I was going to pre-sand it last night and the paint was super tacky still. Nice. Good and dry. So there was the run right there. It's a little rough right now. I literally took a rag with some reducer and I wiped and splodged it and wiped the run completely off with some reducer. And then I had just a tiny bit of paint left in the mixing cup, so I put it in the gun and just kind of resprayed it. Single stage heavy metallics, if you have a run and you go to buff it and sand it out, it will not sand out. You'll sand out the run, but the pearls puddle inside that run, so when you sand them out, you will always see them. It will not buff out. It'll be there forever. So I knew that was going to have to get sanded and repainted. And so I figured worst case scenario, if this looked horrible, I was going to have to sand it and repaint it anyways. But honestly, now I think I can probably wet sand it and buff it. Zoom in, like you can't, actually there's a little run there, but it's inside the door panel when you close. I don't think you would see it. Yeah, that looks really great. I'm happy with it. So now me, myself, and I get to try to put the doors on without nicking or scratching paint. That's one of the reasons I left the hinges in the way I did. They should line up pretty well. They were painted, and I painted the back of the hinges. These were all painted black and cleaned up before I bolted them in, so that they should be fairly rust proof on the inside, but they should be bolted where they go. So when I slide all that together, it should fit nicely. I'm also playing around with the options of painting the steel wheels kind of a beige cream color. So I had an old set of wheels that I had on a different Jeep project that I was thinking about doing beige that I didn't like because the vehicle was beige, and I think that there was too much beige on the vehicle. I honestly think with the gold stripe, the beige wheels are going to look really good. When I get the gold on, I'll roll it up too, and I'd love anyone's information. So let's see what we can get done by the new year. I might have to go out and grab the dash or the grill and set the grill in it just for some pleasure of seeing it done. But I'm very happy with it, and it is definitely a driver paint job. There's nothing perfect about it. I'm glad there's no major runs. I did find another small run on this passenger fender, or driver's front fender, but it's literally where the gold stripe's going to be. Show a little wet sand before the stripe, and no one will be the wiser. I do like how I made the body seam right there to go in through there. There's some real ugly guy in the paint. Don't mind that guy. He doesn't. Yeah, that one. Yeah, yeah. Cool. That is that. Oh, he's right there too. So single stage paint. Is it reflective? Need to fix my hair. An ugly bastard. All right. So let's turn on the boob tube. Find out what other car YouTube guy's on that I can listen to. He can keep me company while I'm working. And I really am liking this brown. It's a pretty color. And I realized too that, you know, I'm trying to make this look very vintage and very period correct, and they did not have metallic paints like this in the 60s or early 70s, but late 70s and 80s you did. So it's almost 2024. Most people, they're not going to know. I think it's going to look good. It'll look like a vehicle's been repainted. So let's see if I can get these doors on. Let's see how nicely they line up. I don't know if I need to put the latches and everything in so that my gaps are right for the things to go in, but well, let's cross our fingers and not nick and tear up the paint. I'm gonna lose my shit if I scratch the paint, but it's just paint. It can be redone, I guess. It's not too bad. Put a rag on that, set that on. Put some tape in to save us some tape, to save some time, or keep me from banging or nicking anything. That's closing really nicely. So, much fun. I'm gonna put the latch in, see if that goes well. And if it closes and latches, that way when we put our pinstripe on, everything lines up well. That body line's right on line. That one's right on line. Cool. All right. That only took a couple minutes. Means something's going to fight me here pretty quick. That latch is in. I'm going to need to paint some of the bolts. Those are still the original green. So we'll get some stainless ones or something, but door closes, door latches, door lines up, passenger done. On to the driver. Both doors are in, both doors are latched. Time to start masking it off for the gold stripe. The hood, even though I've adjusted the hinges and done 1,000 different things, Dodge hoods never lined up dead perfect. So this body line is going to have a little jog to it for where the body line is going to be for the paint stripe. Really, part of the door thing is getting everything on this bottom line, so let's start throwing some tape. I've got some tricky lines to play with, but because the way it kind of swoops downward and then pitches, The bottom has to stay flat, but the bottom of the rear fender slopes upward, and the angles of the rear fender versus the front fender are different because the front fender makes a hard U shape. So I'm trying to keep our decent gap between doors of that. I think when we bring it up to the front, it's just going to end off that straight edge. The body line seam that I left here is going to end there. It would look goofy to bring the stripe around the tail light. I'm going to do just this center section in the same gold on the rear panel, so that will tie it together that way, but then this whole rear panel will stay that direction. I think that's the line I'm going to go with. The tape isn't even touching. You can see it's gapped off. I'm just playing with gaps and lines right now. And then I'm trying to decide if I'm going to go straight or if I'm going to come up over the wheel well and do the wheel well arches and go over the top. But I've been playing with my other truck over here. I can show you that. So I was playing with tape on this girl last night, trying to decide what I wanted to do. If I want to go straight or if I want to leave the flare. I like how I kind of had this small flare here. I was thinking about going up higher and going with the flare there. And then the other option is just go straight across so the top of the flare is the same color and ties it together that direction. But she's such a sexy truck that I figure if the lines work on this, it'll work on anything. But you can see even on this one, this rear wheel well. Now the thing is, we made that front wheel well match the rear when we shortened this body, so it is a different proportions, and the angles of this vehicle is a little bit different. You can see my tape on the back isn't straight, but for guidelines, I think that's what we're going to do. I think I'm going to do what that front fender's doing. I like that. All right, we got her masked up. I think that's going to be our winning stripe. That's the other thing too. If you notice that I've been masking almost everything with plastic. If you ever watch real painters or painting things, everyone masked with paper, and there's a very important reason you mask with paper, so that when you're spraying the paint, your overspray that gets on the plastic won't stick, and then when you go back to the second coat with your spray gun, the air pressure from your gun will blow the loose paint off, and you'll get little flakes of paint, dry chunks of paint fall in your wet paint, and it completely destroys your paint job. If you get proper masking plastic, see where it says paint this side, the paint will actually stick to this side of the plastic. But if you put it on upside down, it acts just like any other normal plastic, that when you paint, the paint will blow off and get on what you're doing. Little story on that is I wasn't paying attention to my masking, and the plastic on the inside of the cab under here was upside down. When I sprayed the primer on, when I went back for my first coat of color, the primer blew off the paint, blowing chunks of primer, dry hard primer on my hood, and I had to fix that last night before I went from coat to coat. So that is why you mask with paper. Paper is a much better way to mask so that you never have that problem. If you do use plastic, make sure it's an automotive paintable plastic that allows the plastic to stick to it. And if you're dyslexic and you see this written upside down, you have it facing the wrong direction and it won't work. It'll work once, but when you go back to coat the second time, it'll blow off. That's also why you don't want to use plastic from like a hardware store or something like that. I'm going to start scotch brighting it down, wash the floor down, mop the floor a little bit, get some water in here, and let's get some gold on it. I think it'll look good. Well, a little nervous, but there's no going back now. So let's see how she'll look. I think it'll work. If not,
Well, we'll sand it down and repaint it.
Well, that's one coat. All splotchy, not uneven. Like I said on the brown, metallics will take a few coats to even out. All right, well there is 4 coats. It took a little bit more than I would have thought to cover that brown. Now with single stage, and if you don't want to have a hard paint line, if you can demask quickly, the paint will be soft and the edge of the paint will kind of curl and like roll into itself, and you won't end up with this hard paint. So I just sprayed it, so I am going to demask as quick as possible to get the color off and make it look good. But I want both hands so that I don't get the wet gold paint on any of the brown. So I'm not going to have this on video because it's very hard to hold one hand while demasking the other. But that's about what that ends up mean. It's a little satisfying just doing that though. All right. Well, give me a second and I'll get to the next step. Well, I had to throw the grill on it just for the look. There she is in all her demasked glory. And there's the back panel. It'll say Dodge right down that center in black. Now we can see more of the interior once the panels or everything are in, and you see the brown and the seats that are on in it. You'll see how it will pull that all together. So that's it. Happy December 31st. We have an upcoming new year. Hoping to be driving this on 2024 and enjoying it. But you know what? I want to end this with 3 questions. 1, I'm going with steel wheels. Got to go with 17-inch wheels because of the brakes. They're going to be a 17-inch steel wheel. And I'm thinking about painting them a cream color similar to the inside of, put these up here, similar to the inside of the interior, which is not that wheel, but that color. So what do you think? Cream wheels, gold wheels, silver wheels, black wheels, but they are going to be somewhat period correct. Tell me what you think. Also, 2 other questions. The other question I have is the internal door panels. You see we are the body color around. The dash is the same color as the outside coming all the way around. But that little inside panel right there, these panels, it goes right there. Should that panel be the same color as the inside here, kind of that off cream, possibly the same color as the rims, or should it be the gold? And last question, the mirrors that go right here. We have a few options. Should we do West Coast mirrors like that? Kind of truckish. Same thing we have on Rusty over here. Or should I go with something small like, or these sleek little mirrors like we put on the Beast? They look nice, but I gotta be honest, they don't give you the best visibility, but they have a nice look. And the last option that I'm thinking about going with, the 80s mirror like what's on the Ramcharge. Kind of crushes my soul to put big old holes and bolt them to the door, but they look period correct for the era of what we're building. And they're nice big mirrors that let you look out of and see out nice. So tell me what you think. What color should the wheels be? What color should the inner panel be? And what type of mirror should I put on it? The Sweptcharger and I'd like to say thanks for watching me struggle. Everyone have an absolute awesome new year. I hope 2024 is the absolute best for everybody. I'm going to get some rest. I flat kicked my butt on this one. I'm a wee bit tired. The shop is a big mess. I have a lot to clean up. Happy New Year, everyone.